Actually, I've got to correct myself. There were a few journalists today who did try to nail down some Labor lies, and naturally they included our own Julia Bradley, when Anthony Albanese told an absolute whopper at last night's debate. He claimed last night that his government had not asked their public servants to model the cost of scrapping negative gearing for people owning more than one home, which would really hurt their pocket if he did that. No, he hadn't done that at all.
Was it modelled?
It certainly wasn't commissioned by us to do so.
It was modelled by the government. It was that's publicly available. This Prime Minister has a problem with the truth.
Now, the thing is that what Albanese said is not what his own Treasurer and rival, Jim Chalmers, said last year when he admitted he'd asked for costings on exactly that idea.
It is not unusual at all for governments or for treasurers to get advice on contentious issues which are in the public domain, including in the Parliament. It is not unusual for treasurers to do that. But we have made it very clear through the course of this week that we have a broad and ambitious housing policy already, and those changes aren't part of it.
I mean, Chalmers tried to save Albanese at today's press conference, saying, well, look, I didn't actually commission costings. I sort of asked for input, asked around. I mean, come on, Jim, don't make a fool of yourself. But boy, did Albanese get head up today when Julia Bradley said, well, hello, is scrapping negative gearing, which is what the Greens want, is that something you might then negotiate with the Greens to get their support after the election? Albanese did not like that.
Do you rule out meeting the Greens' demands on negative gearing?
I rule out negotiating with the Greens. That's even further for you. I rule out. I have responded to that lots of times.
Can I ask again?
Well, you can ask again. You get the same answer. We have our housing policy that we are taking forward. The Greens, I am not negotiating with the Greens. We make it very clear.
You can trust him, can't you? I mean, isn't this the guy that before the election promised he wouldn't change those stage 3 tax cuts? They were going to go through, and then after the election, change them completely. Joining me is Deputy Liberal Leader Sussan Ley, who actually has a new policy to sell that I'll get to in a minute. Sussan, thank you so much for your time. You know, what gets me, I've got to say, is why the Coalition campaign hasn't been smashing those key Labor lies like, you know, you guys are going to destroy Medicare. You got secret cuts in mind. You got nuclear power stations that have cost $600 billion. It's been out there every single day. I heard it twice on just Sky News from a couple of spokesmen.
Well, we are, Andrew, and we must. And as I listen to communities and travel around the country, including with Peter Dutton in the Hunter today, Australians are much smarter than this Prime Minister gives them credit for. And as someone who's passionate about things being made in Australia, you listen to this Prime Minister talk all the time about made in Australia, when we're seeing everything that was made in Australia, manufactured here, going overseas because energy is unaffordable or it's unreliable. And this trend has just got to stop. Triple the number of manufacturing insolvencies under this government. And 30,000 small businesses have gone to the wall. These are alarming and awful statistics. And again, I know Australians are tuning in to the messages that we're sending them, and we're always listening. And it's so important at this election that they realise, and I know they are, how we have to get the country back on track. And we are going in the wrong direction under Labor.
Yeah, well, I still can't help but thinking whoever's running your campaigns have been flat-footed in having a really decisive bang, 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 so that every time they tell a lie, everyone listening knows it's a lie. The media double standards, though, they really get me, Sussan. I mean, you know, many journalists are running the Labor lie that Peter Dutton is copying Donald Trump. And I ask you, could you imagine if Peter Dutton last night had said what Albanese did about trusting Trump? Listen to this.
Do you trust Donald Trump?
Yeah, I have no reason not to.
What if Peter Dutton had gone first and said, I trust Donald Trump and I have no reason not to? He would have been laughed out of town, wouldn't he?
Well, Labor is shamelessly politicising the issue of Australia's relationship with Donald Trump, with the US. We have worked productively with every US administration, Biden, Obama, the first Trump administration. We had strong personal relationships that delivered the right outcome on steel and aluminium tariffs in 2018, and we are well placed to have the same positive relationships. But you're quite right, Andrew, this shameless politicising of that relationship is done in the way that this Prime Minister is doing everything in this campaign. He's telling lies, he's being petty. At no point is he demonstrating his genuine care for the Australian people. And at no point is he fessing up to all of the promises that he has broken. And you saw that in the debate last night, when he was put on the sticky paper and asked, when will prices come down, power prices come down? And he simply could not answer, because there is no plan for power prices to come down. And that means manufacturing in this country continues to be under threat with a Labor government.
And yet, Sussan, I've got to say, you know, the shameless lying is working. I mean, they're making it work, and that's a real issue for you guys, how you counter that. But look, to the policy you've just announced, you came on to discuss, you're going to create 12 Australian technical colleges. Now, these are specialist schools for years 10 to 12, you know, at the end of high school, or 11 to 12 for kids that don't want the usual academic education. It's a throwback to the past. In fact, you know, the Howard government actually set up technical colleges, 24 of them at some stage, for kids that wanted to not such an academic high school, but more trades orientated. But then Labor scrapped them. Was that because they'd actually been tried and failed?
They did, and I assume the education unions had a lot to do with that. But I was at one with Peter today that actually survived those scrapping of the technical colleges in 2008, and that's the Hunter Trade College. And you're right, Andrew, this is a generational investment into skills and training in our schools, because we in the Coalition will always resist the view that if you haven't made it to university, you haven't made it in life. And to walk around the facilities today, to see the training in automotive, in carpentry, in all of the trades that build a house, which we so critically need today, and see how these young men and women are finding their way into employment pathways, into the workforce, and through what can be challenging years in secondary education if you don't fit the ATAR model. And I'm delighted that this $260 million investment in 12 Australian technical colleges has been announced, and what it will deliver for parents, for the school community, but most importantly for the skills pipeline. Because the Prime Minister talks a big game when it comes to skills and training, but we've seen 90,000 fewer apprentices and trainees since he came to government. And we just haven't seen a focus on building that pipeline and building that workforce for the future.
Look, I think there are a lot of kids sitting at the high schools that want to work with their hands. And I think it's right to stream them earlier if that's what they want. I think it's wrong to make sort of one size fits all. Sussan Ley, thank you so much indeed for your time.